Hello, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. So we'll start with the session on the trash landing on you, uncovering the wheel on the waste street in Asia Pacific. Okay. Now, recently, Malaysia sent back about 300 containers of waste to the countries of origin. In 2019, the Philippines sent back waste to Canada after over 5 years of calls from civil society there. And countries in the Asia Pacific region are finally pushing back on waste trade. But it continues to happen. So good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and also good evening to some. This is McIntyre from the Wipes Malaysia, hosting this media briefing, which is entitled Trash Landing on You, Uncovering the Wheel on the Waste Trade in Asia Pacific. Now, this media briefing is organized by the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives, GAIA, Asia Pacific, and the Break Free from Plastic Asia Pacific movement, together with GAIA-BFFP Media Fellows, of which I am a member. So joining me this afternoon are three distinguished speakers. I'll start with S. Mageswari of the Consumers Association of Penang. Magesh holds a Bachelor of Science in Human Development, Masters in Environmental Management. She has been a research officer in the Community and Environment section of the Consumers Association of Penang since 1992. Her responsibility in CAP involved assisting communities affected by destructive development projects, pollution policies that bring about negative impact to the communities and the environment. And she coordinates the organization's community and environmental projects, and also serves as the Honorary Secretary of Sahabat Alam Malaysia, or in English, Friends of the Earth Malaysia. That's Magesh for you. The second speaker is Yeung, who is the Campaign and Communications Manager of the Green Earth, Hong Kong. Ray is an environmental activist who advocates policy change in issues such as plastic waste trade, which aims at deterring developed countries from engaging in unscrupulous waste trade through Hong Kong, waste management and reduction, and sustainability. And the third speaker is Mr. Hemantha, who is the Executive Director for the Center of Environmental Justice, Sri Lanka. Mr. Hemantha is the co-founder and Executive Director of the Center for Environmental Justice and Friends of the Earth, Sri Lanka, and he has 31 years of experience working as an environmental justice issues nationally and internationally. Now, his organization is a member of GAIA and BFFP. So I would like to start the session with leaving the floor to Mageswari to start. If you would, please, Magesh.
Okay, so as Ian has mentioned just now, waste trade has been around for decades, yeah? Since China closed its door to waste imports in 2018, Malaysia happens to be the largest recipient of plastic waste. Yeah? Since early 2018, the communities in Jenjarom and Klang, which are close to the ports in Port Klang, they started complaining of pollution and health problems related to air pollution. Then the communities themselves investigated, and finally they exposed the mushrooming of illegal plastic recycling plants And also they found a lot of dumping sites of plastic waste that could not be recycled. So not all plastics can be recycled. So all this residual waste were just dumped in agriculture areas. So besides the air pollution and burning, our soils and water bodies like the ponds and the rivers and the seas were also contaminated. If you see Malaysia's imports, we are dealing with HS3915. So in 2018, it was really very high. The import was about 872,762 tons. But then it reduced to 333.5 thousand tons in 2019 because the Malaysian government was taking some measures to control the imports. But then we saw an increase again in 2020. It came up to 478,092 tons. Yeah, this was because although the Malaysian government says there is a ban on imports of plastic waste, but in reality, they were issuing approved permits for imports of plastic waste. So besides the plastic waste trade, we should also be cautious about the proliferation of paper recycling plants in Malaysia now. There is a cluster of recycling plants for paper waste, which is being proposed in Kuala Langat. The community there is now, previously they were fighting the plastic waste trade, now they're also fighting this paper waste recycling plants. Because together with the paper waste, as we have seen in Indonesia, plastic waste is also in those consignments of paper waste. And furthermore, the importers, as they anticipate residual waste with the paper waste that is being brought in, they are also installing incinerators on site at the recycling plants. So this is a cause of concern because burning of plastics, it will emit toxic gases, including those that can cause cancer, like dioxins and furans. And also we have found during our field surveys and also the communities, they themselves are very vigilant now and they're going on field surveys. We have also found dumping of shredded plastics from electronic waste components. So we should not be only looking into all this plastic waste trade, but also the trade of paper waste and electronic waste. Because these are sometimes intentionally burned. We find stories from the community saying, okay, there are these recycling plants, they are burning waste. This could be coming out from the stacks or the incineration, during incineration, or also burning in dumping sites. So this is the situation here in Malaysia right now.
Okay, Magesh. Magesh, I understand you also have access to the latest statistics on plastic waste coming into Malaysia. Would you like to share with us what is the numbers of this plastic waste?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, these were data from the UN Comtrade. You can access data, and we had just accessed data on HS code 3915. And in 2020, it was reported that 478,092 tons of plastic waste was imported by Malaysia. And if you can see the US data, customs data, they also have monthly reports of waste that is being exported from US, and we see that most of the exports are coming to Malaysia and also Vietnam. So waste are still coming in from US, although US is not a party to the Basel Convention.
So despite the pandemic, global pandemic, plastic waste continues to be imported, right, Magesh?
Yes, it is continue to be imported, and also we also have to the burden is on us to also deal with the local waste, production of local waste. And we can see that due to all this online delivery and takeaways from restaurants, because there's no more dining in, the amount of plastic waste has also increased, including disposable PPEs.
Okay. So I will now go on to our second speaker, Mr. Yeung from Hong Kong. Particularly, Ray, one of the areas of concern is Hong Kong has been tagged as the re-exporter of the waste after it was supposedly sent back to the country of origin. Please tell us more, Ray. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I think I share the maybe the experience that what Mageswari shared, because I have been Malaysia, Sungai Chadong in 2019, and I also witnessed how those plastic waste being burned. Although Hong Kong is not a dumping ground like Southeast Asia countries, it has been a major free port for re-exporting these plastic waste to like Malaysia, Vietnam, or Thailand, which obviously violates the environmental justice. Since the import of foreign waste was banned from entering China in 2018, Hong Kong's re-exported volume of waste has dropped by more than 18%. And yet, Southeast Asia and other developing economies have become the substitute dumping grounds. I can give you some data in the last year. In 2020, Hong Kong re-export 100,000 tons of plastic waste, which equivalent to 5,000 containers to Southeast Asia countries, including Malaysia. And we also look at the recent situation and what you have mentioned that Hong Kong is being tagged, because Hong Kong has been playing this critical role in global waste trade. Last year, the International Criminal Police Organization published a report about the criminal trends in the global plastic waste market, in which Hong Kong is named as one of the parties to the crime. And the report draws attention to the fact that China imports 45% of the world's waste from 1992 to 2018, in which Hong Kong plays the re-exporting role of this. But even after the plastic waste ban and also the waste ban of China, it continues to re-export those plastic waste. And although Hong Kong was named once in the report, but what it represents behind is the role of re-exporting plastic waste, which aim at disguising waste re-export locations as their places of origin. For instance, in 2019, Malaysia imported 7 containers of plastic waste, which were originally exported from Belgium, but covered up as re-exports from Hong Kong. So the main reasons for exporting plastic waste from developing countries to developing countries is for cheap disposal or burning. And the most important reason that's why they're using Hong Kong as a middleman to re-export the waste is that to lower the cost, because once the destination countries send back those containers, they won't burden the cost to send it back to the Europe countries. They can just send it back to Hong Kong and also wait for other buyers to buy those containers. So that's what we are concerned about. And of course, this year, the government issue and implement a new guideline because of the Basic Convention ratifying as new amendment. So we can also share the information later when we discuss what we can do in our region.
Okay, thank you, Ray. Very interesting insight. Ray, as the containers are left in the port in Hong Kong, is there concern of leakage, contamination, and the threat to the environment with the lots of containers stuck in the port in Hong Kong? What is your take on that?
Indeed, Hong Kong, there are 2 reasons for importing those plastic containers. First of all is because Hong Kong, the recycling rate in Hong Kong is really low. So some of the maybe traders or recyclers need to import the plastic waste from other developed countries for recycling or for their business. And secondly, for some of the traders in Hong Kong doing business for re-exporting these plastic waste, And although this plastic waste container will not be directly recycled in Hong Kong for those re-exporting traders, but these containers are finally going to like Southeast Asia countries. And when they were sent back, and we need to take it or recycle it. And what we are concerned about is that these plastic wastes are highly contaminated. That's why the Southeast Asia countries need to send it back to Hong Kong. And
Okay.
what our government can do is either recycle it or it in the landfills. So we can imagine that the only small in Hong Kong. So maybe most of them are eventually dumped in the landfill.
That's quite a horrifying prospect here. Thank you, Ray. Now we move on to our third speaker, Mr. Hemantha from Sri Lanka. Sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ian. Of course, Sri Lanka was in the media last year because we were able to send back 263 waste containers came from United Kingdom. And this was came to Sri Lanka around 2017, few times. And it was supposed to be value adding and sent back to other countries. But unfortunately, those containers have been stagnated in the airport area, which is in the pre-trade zone, as well as in the China container terminal. And Center for Environmental Justice filed the legal action against the Customs Authority, as well as the Central Environmental Authority, which is the Basel focal point. And the court ordered all these containers to send back to the origin, which is the United Kingdom. So of course, you can understand Sri Lanka is located in the southern tip of India, and there are thousands of ships moving around Sri Lanka, and many of them may be carrying plastic waste as well as the other type of waste. And sometime back, there was a proposal to have the waste to energy plant, and which recently they established waste to energy plant in Sri Lanka with the support of Treasury. Government Treasury is paying 1 billion Sri Lankan rupees to continue this operation. Unfortunately, it is not a successful one. It is high polluting. It is located in the heart of Colombo, and it is one of the dangerous waste to energy plant. So we recently initiated. But Sri Lanka is a small country, and we don't have enough waste. And there was a proposal about 2 years ago to sign a free trade agreement between Sri Lanka and Singapore to bring some of the waste as well as the other material. And when we found the proposal, we found at least 62 different type of waste could have import brought from Singapore to Sri Lanka and then use here or maybe either burn. So we, because of the public pressure, we were able to stop this this agreement. But unfortunately, we see that at the moment, there's a new proposal coming to Sri Lanka. You know, other than the Colombo Harbour, there's a harbour called Hemantha Harbour, which is now a 99-year lease with the Chinese government. So China has supported building this harbour. China has supported building the airport in the same area. Now China wants land in that area for an industrial zone. And this particular place, it's going to be over 500-acre area, which is going to be a Hong Kong-based King Spread Development Limited, who is going to set up a circular economy industrial park to treat plastic waste as well as other type of very toxic waste to separate copper, cadmium, and all these heavy metals. So it's a very dangerous thing. So you can see that with the support of China, although China stops importing those waste into China, so China is supporting many other smaller countries to to set up these kind of industries and dump these waste. So it's in this trash business, these big companies behind, even in Sri Lanka, the big companies involved in this importing 243 containers, and we are not sure how many other plastic waste we are importing. So, but anyway, being Sri Lanka is strategically very close to the shipping line, Sri Lanka is one of the most vulnerable location for trash dumping, whether in the name of recycling, circular economy, or direct waste dumping. So I'll stop here.
Mr. Hemantha, I think it's very insightful what you have shared with us. Are there evidence or situations or cases where the waste have been illegally dumped in Sri Lanka itself? Are there instances of that, since you have a lot of waste in your country?
Yes, actually, there are certain instances they have brought these waste containers to the national waste dump, because we don't have a sanitary waste dump, sanitary landfill, no central landfill. But there were instances that they brought all these waste into the dumping sites, and also they were found in burning in certain locations, especially outside Colombo, and burning next to the forest areas. But there were few instances that they wanted to dump some of the trash, like chemically contaminated plastic, as well as oxygen carbamate, and we were able to stop those activities few years back. It's more than 10 years ago, but right now there are instances that we see they have dumped in a small scale, but we see that because China has stopped importing all these waste, I think. So now the trend is much more to bring under various other legalized names.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so before we dive into questions and answers session, I invite our fellow journalist friends to post your questions in the Q&A box or in the comment section on Facebook. We are live on Facebook too. And later I will read them or invite you to ask them directly to the speakers. So waste trade has been around for decades, particularly in Asia Pacific. But it's only recently that waste are being dumped into other parts of the region after China closed its doors formally on waste importation in 2018. In Indonesia, for example, Eton, a group in East Java, is on the news recently after exposing a high plastic contamination of mixed paper waste. How bad is the situation in the region? So I'll leave this question to Magesh to first answer. In the perspective of Malaysia, Magesh?
Actually, Ian, I think we have already responded to that just now.
Okay.
But in terms of how our country is responding to it, so like in 2018, as I mentioned, the communities have been exposing this um, environmental injustice, in the media, and especially when it was exposed by international media. We had BBC, Al Jazeera, CBC, all exposing this issue. The government started taking action. The Malaysian government started taking action. They raided illegal recycling plants, shut them down, and they also took action against these recycling factories, which are legal but did not comply with the environmental regulations. And then the Malaysian government also had a temporary moratorium in mid-2018. But then what we found was, when the government took action in areas around Port Klang, Jejarum, Kuala Langat, and Klang, the illegal recyclers started moving up north. So we have been hearing news about dumping in Sungai Petani, and the communities were complaining of smell of burning plastics, at night, especially at night. And so they again exposed the injustice and campaigned for government action. They're actually calling for an end to all these waste imports, including right now we are campaigning against this imports of plastic waste and paper waste. However, the government is still allowing waste imports by issuing approved permits, And starting June 2021, the Malaysian government had announced that this plastic waste importers, they will have to pay a levy of 20 ringgit for every ton of plastic waste which is being brought into Malaysia. So we are not agreeable to this levy, yeah? Because it's like, it's only 20 ringgit per ton, but then the burden that the communities and our environment have to take, it's like more than that, yeah? And also, these factories which are given approved permits, they are allowed to import 70% of plastic waste based on their factory's capacity. And then in terms of contamination rate, the government has also come up with the 90% of recyclable content in the consignment of waste that is being brought in, especially the plastic waste. But that 5% of contaminants must not contain hazardous waste, and also it has to be able to be recycled. But our question is, who is actually looking into this? Yeah, whether there's so many containers coming into our ports every day. Yeah, is the government going to check all the containers? Yeah, they will probably check if they get a tick off that something is coming in, because like in February, March, we had information from our colleague in US that some plastic waste consignments are coming into Malaysia. And we alerted the Malaysian government. They were waiting for the consignment to come in, and then finally when they opened up, they said, oh, this is clean and homogeneous waste, so it does not fall under the prior informed consent that is needed under the Basel Convention. So this is because of the tip-off. But then if it is coming in every day, you would not know. Yeah? And then how are the illegal recycling plants receiving all this plastic waste? Yeah, so there must be some leakage somewhere. And so we need to look into these issues. So although the government is allowing this waste coming in, but how are they monitoring and enforcing?
Okay, thank you. Now, Ray, what is your perspective? What is the Hong Kong government doing with regards to this Hong Kong's role as a re-exporter of plastic waste? Is there more enforcement?
Yes, I will briefly explain that before 2021, waste trade issue was not the top priority of our government officials, including our Environmental Protection Department or the Custom and Excise Department. So there was no specific regulations on importing or re-exporting the highly contaminated plastic waste. So that's why Hong Kong was utilized as a major free port for plastic waste. And in recent years, some of the green groups, including us, keep monitoring the latest data and expose if any containers of plastic waste are being sent back from Southeast Asia countries, for example, Malaysia or Philippines. And we also engage our media to expose the fact that we are suffering. And also the Southeast Asia countries also suffering because of Hong Kong. And the government officials stay alert to stop containers being sent back. But of course, the best way is to beef up the gatekeeping role instead of the remedy afterwards. So since the Basel Convention was ratified last year and also applied from this year, and Hong Kong, the government, the Environmental Protection Department has then formulated the new guideline for the waste plastic import and export, which requires proper declaration for import or re-export of those regulated plastic waste. So that's mean if you want to re-export those plastic waste via Hong Kong, you need to apply an permission from Hong Kong and also get the consent from the destination, the custom and excise officers from the destination. Also in this year, we have checked the latest data. The import and re-export of plastic waste drops over 50% and 70% respectively. And for an instance, the Hong Kong imported around 2,000 tons plastic waste and re-export 1,000 tons of plastic waste to Southeast Asia countries in March this year. So we can see that there is an obvious decrease of these imports and re-export. But we should also keep an eye on it to see whether those plastic waste will be imported or re-export again by using Hong Kong, since the new guidelines is just issued in first quarter.
Interesting. Okay, Mr. Hemantha, what about Sri Lanka? What is the government doing there to address this issue? And are you satisfied with?
In Sri Lanka, the law does not allow importing post-consumer waste, especially under the Basel Convention. Post-consumer waste is not allowed, and also some of the laws have amended to suit to the Basel Convention, like the Export-Import Ordinance, then the National Environmental Act, and the Customs Ordinance as well. But there are some loopholes in these laws, so that's how these importers are bringing those kind of waste. I think that is the main reason that the countries like Singapore wanted to sign a free trade agreement. So there were two lists, and under one of the list, there were 62 different type of waste which they could have import. And in my understanding, the Singapore receives a lot of waste from other countries after this China ban, similar to Hong Kong probably, and they wanted to put it in somewhere else. So it's Sri Lanka as a developing country, and also doesn't have. I mean, we have some corrupt systems sometimes, and maybe they wanted to use that system to bring some of those waste here. And my understanding, so that those waste may not be useful to country, but that is why some of them wanted to have the waste to energy plant, so they can at least burn those waste to I mean the waste in the waste to energy plants. But otherwise, the national law is a stronger one. At least the court system we are trusting, and in our case, when we found that 263 containers were imported from UK, and we went to the Court of Appeal, and we established to that court ordered all these big companies. They are big companies, so they were asked to send them back to the origin. So I have monitored where they are moving. Actually, many of them many of the ships went to India, and I could monitor through the marine traffic. They were crossing Suez Canal, but there was one big ship with 61 containers, so they went to Malaysia, and from Malaysia to Taiwan and to China. And we don't know, because the customs authority did not give us the container number, so therefore we were not able to track the containers, but we were able to track the ships only. So in my understanding, perhaps even when we put them into the ships, I learned that some of the Indonesian containers came to India, and there were such a bad experience as well. So therefore, I think that a transparent mechanism for the governments, all the governments in the region, need to happen. So I think otherwise we have a single window mechanism that everyone can monitor where those ships are moving. So it will be hard. So I think although the law is stronger, there are some times, so they abuse this law, as well as our systems are not very transparent.
Okay. I think based on what the three speakers have just summarized for us, I think waste is definitely a regional or even a global issue. More profoundly a regional here in the Asia Pacific, because the waste is coming here. So how dirty is this waste street? I read from a GAIA report uh, about discarded communities on the front lines of the global plastic crisis, that they are the illegal activities behind the trade, and there are environmental and social injustices involved. Recently in Malaysia, there was an NGO called C4 that also highlighted a report on linking waste trade to some levels of corruption in the country. So hearing all your stories, I would like to know, is there anything we can do as a region? Right now, there are efforts from receiving countries, the Ministry of Environment, to try and regulate this better. But is there a way for us to have a unified call or stand against waste trade as a region? Ray, could you start this first? What is your take on this? Yeah, Ray, could you hear?
Yep. Thank you. From our perspective, that the data transparency is really critical for the civil society, including the green groups and also the journalists, to keep an eye on this, and also push the pressure on our government to beef up the gatekeep role on this plastic waste trade. For example, in 2019, we received that an information from Malaysia that they were going to send back the plastic waste containers to Hong Kong. So what we can do is to also engage our media, and also to expose this news to the public, that how these plastic waste trade are using Hong Kong as a free port to be exported to the Southeast Asia countries. And secondly, I do think that for instance, this year we have engaged a local lawmaker to also ask and send official questions to the government to disclose the latest data of the plastic waste trade, including the imports, exports, and re-exports. So what we can gather this information and share with other countries, green groups that we can cooperate with to have some kind of like this media briefing or the news release to those media in Asia Pacific. That is also a way to keep an eye and also monitor and keep the pressure on those traders and also our government officials.
Okay. Magesh, so what do you think we could do as a region in handling this?
I agree with Ray regarding the data transparency, and also we need increased government action on the illegal shipments. As we had mentioned just now, Interpol report on global plastic waste management, they found an alarming increase in illegal plastic pollution and trade across the world since 2018. Because even in Malaysia, we found false declarations of goods and smuggling happening. So we need the whole region to be extra vigilant in terms of this. And also in terms of the government, okay, they got the illegal containers that were brought in. It has to be easy to send back the containers to the origin countries. And also you need the country of exports to be accountable to what is being sent to countries like Asia. And also, since Asia is now tackling this issue, it is going to Africa and Latin America. All this waste is being exported elsewhere. And also, as a region, we need countries to adopt genuine waste trade restrictions, equal or stronger to Basel. Because as I mentioned this, Malaysia says we have banned, but you are having an AP. And also Thailand also announced a ban, but then we can still find all this plastic waste still being dumped in our countries. And also there are still some countries around the Asian region which has not ratified the Basel Ban Amendment. So they need to ratify the Basel Ban Amendment. And also there is a need to avoid loopholes. Although the Basel Ban has all those restrictions, there are also still some loopholes because they are mentioning plastic waste which is exempted from the Basel Convention rules. It has to be sorted, it has to be halogen free, and it has to be free from contamination. But what is the practical meaning of free from contamination? Yeah, okay, Malaysia says 95% is allowed. Yeah, has to be recyclable, and the other 5% has to be recyclable. Yeah, but then maybe other countries are not doing it. China had 0.5% contamination rate. Yeah, and also there is also toxic additives in plastics. So we need to be clear. Yeah, all these plastic-based manufacturers, all plastic manufacturers have to be transparent on what are the additives being added into plastics. It's not so easy because there's so many additives and chemicals being used in the production of plastic itself. And then, so there are a lot of other issues that we need to look into. And then we also need to look into plastic waste, which is now being considered as fuel. Yeah, so they're sending plastic waste from other countries, saying, "Oh, this can be used as fuel for your cement kilns." So we need to really look into that, and they would be using a different HS code. It won't be 3915. It could be something other, some other HS code. So we really have to be careful in terms of this, and as a region, we also need to be really vigilant, yeah, to fight this environmental crime and social injustice. So that is
Interesting. Mr. Hemantha, what is your view on what we can do as a region on this matter?
I support both Ray and Magesh on this their proposals. First thing we have to understand that whole this waste trade is a mafia business. So it is we don't know who is sending, we don't know who is receiving, and also we don't know how they are bringing, so in how illegal so these things. And also we have to bust the myth that these waste are recyclable, and most of these waste are not recyclable. So therefore we have to convince our politicians that importing these waste is actually killing our countries, our soil, our waterways, etc. And it is, and finally it might be end up in waste to energy, but still, as Magesh mentioned, that it will release dioxins, furans, and all these carcinogenic. So I think this science, sharing all this science, is such an important thing. The sharing the finances, the economics of waste business is really, really important, because most of the time, so they think that importing waste from other countries is a profitable business. At the end, the extended cost and the cost to the environment is really, really serious. So we are not, we have not done that duty so far. So I think it is most important that all the top of the government, to the parliament, to the other politicians, they need to know about what's wrong with these plastic import. And also, I think we should have the motto that Asia is not the waste basket of the Western countries. I think that gives us some understanding about why they are importing and how bad this is. Um, I think in our part, other than we are respecting the UN conventions, we have the ASEAN, we have the SAARC. So those bodies need to talk and also agree that, okay, we are not going to import all these plastic waste or the trash from the developed countries. Um, and also sharing information is very, very important, because I think in today's technology, in this digital world, when the plastic container goes to the ship, you will know that where that is going to move and where that is ending. And those receiving countries need to get information immediately. We are not using the that that science at the moment. And also, as Magesh mentioned, that HS codes are not very clear, because some of the HS codes in Sri Lanka are not giving a right explanation about what it includes. And the last few containers we have received, and we were told that there was some from the UK, they have mentioned that these are post-consumer waste. So the importing post-consumer waste to Sri Lanka is illegal under the Basel Convention. But the problem is that in certain countries in Asia have not fully amended their laws to, to respect to the Basel Convention. So that is also one of the problems. So I think, so we have to close all these loopholes in our own countries, but at the same time, the ASEAN, SAARC, and all other scientific bodies and the civil society. So we need to work hard to bring this information to the political systems, to the other bodies, and to pressure them. Okay, we are not supporting any of the governments who are supporting waste import or the waste mafia. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Very insightful again from the three of y'all. Now I would read questions from the other journalists. There's not much questions today, but shout out to Jasmine Romero. Her question is more on the Philippines though. What is the data on the Philippines as far as global waste trade is concerned? Has there been any improvement at all? And what is the perspective of this? I think probably Gaia could respond to her in a form of an email or a private chat, because I think the speakers here may not have access to the information on the Philippines global waste trade situation. But nonetheless, I have a question which I'll be posing to each one of y'all. Do you think because of this COVID-19 global pandemic, do you think that global waste trade is also going to increase tremendously because everybody now is been asked to stay at home and to pack up their food, and they're packing it up using plastic containers and plastic bags. Maybe Magesh, you would like to offer an insight into this. Do you think it's going to get worse for global waste trade and the illicit form of it?
Yeah, so as what you mentioned, it's a global problem now. And of course, we have already seen an increase in terms of the type of waste that is being produced now through all this online delivery, all these tin films where you have packaging and also food packaging. Yeah, there has been an increase, and so we cannot call it waste trade. I would say it's waste dumping. Yeah. But with all these restrictions, with the Basel ban and all that, even Malaysia also, post-consumer waste, they still allow post-consumer waste to be imported, but it has supposed to be clean and homogeneous. So it depends on what kind of waste that is coming in. But what we have all been campaigning for, including Gaia and Break Free from Plastic, we need to phase out unnecessary single-use plastics. Of course, we know that this PPE is really very important now, but for consumers, we can, rather than using all this disposable masks, we are encouraging them to use reusable masks, yeah, and also support systems for reusable products and packaging. Yeah, when you are ordering food, don't order food. You can, if possible, just cook at home. Yeah, so these are the things that we have to do as consumers. And also in terms of additives in plastics, we have mentioned just now. So we need the plastic manufacturers to disclose what additives that are being used, and also so that we can end all this toxic recycling. So whatever things that we are not able to be recycled, it has to be phased out. Yeah. So these are the measures that there has to be taken. And then our recycling industry, of course, Malaysia has a huge plastic recycling industry. It should serve domestic waste management. Yeah. Right now, according to the law, it's like you can import 70% of the capacity of your waste. So you need to actually prioritize waste management locally. So we need, and all the other countries, exporting countries, they should be responsible of their own waste. So,
do you think the government is responsive to some of the suggestions you have made, Magesh, on this matter?
You can say in terms of the Ministry of Environment, they have been responsive, but then in terms of the imports, it's a different ministry, yeah, who's in charge. So it is the Ministry of Housing and Local Government. They are the ones who are imposing the levy of 20 ringgit per ton of waste that is being imported. They are looking at the money in it, but then they are not looking at the cost, yeah, the burden that we have to take up with all this waste that is being dumped, yeah, and also in terms of cleanup. When in 2018 the waste was found at dumping sites. What happened to the waste? Who had to pay for that? It was taxpayers' money. Yeah, when you say government is being responsible for the cleanup, but it is us as taxpayers who are paying for all this cleanup costs. Yeah, so why should we burden with this foreign waste, yeah, when we have our own other issues to look into?
Okay. Now, Ray, what do you think? Do you think because of this pandemic, the waste issue is going to get worse? The level of consignments, the tonnage and things, EV exports, do you think it's going to get worse because what pandemic is doing? What is your
I think
opinion?
I share the same experience with Mageswari, and from we can just see in the pandemic the amount of plastic waste like the takeaway, like the plastic bags, like the disposable masks are everywhere, maybe in our oceans and also in our country parks. So we can imagine that the huge amount of these plastic waste even a small portion of them can be recycled, but the maybe developed countries is still finding a way to handle it, either maybe incinerate it or dumping in the landfills. That these are unsustainable way, or just export or re-export to other countries as a dumping ground that we are obviously opposed. And I think we should look at like the collaborative or approach to tackle the plastic waste. For example, what we some of the foundation reports stated that the producer responsibility scheme that is one of the important way to increase and handle the waste, that the corporate should take responsibility. And secondly, that the global waste trade that every government should implement, and also to closely beef up their gatekeeping role on checking those plastic waste trade flow if without any permission or illegally import or export. That we can trace and also send it back once we find that those plastic waste were through maybe Hong Kong or other countries for the test.
Okay. What about Mr. Hemantha? What do you think? Do you think the situation is going to get worse for host countries, the South countries, in terms of plastic waste because of the pandemic? What do you think, sir?
We see with the pandemic the increase of all the single-use plastic use, because many of the people start shopping from the big supermarkets, and they only have the packeted food, and sometimes even the home delivery. All of them are packeted with single-use plastic. So in Sri Lanka, we have seen that single-use plastics amount increase, and also a lot of waste dumps now have contaminated of the face mask, and sometimes in some hospitals we found they are doing incineration with the cold pandemic contaminated waste, but not everyone. So therefore, we see that those kind of contaminated waste is going to be increased in other countries as well. So which is either in certain places they have started burning, so which is again dangerous. So but certain countries um, uh, will send it to some other country. So I think so that is I hope that in the future there'll be more waste coming into our countries. Um, On contrary, in Sri Lanka, we have initiated sachet packet ban starting March 31st. Now less than 20 milligrams or 20 milliliters sachet is banned in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, we found the Unilever, now they put 6 milligram, 4 packets of 6 milligram into 24 and selling as just one piece. And they say now this is 20, more than 20 milliliters. You know, this is the shampoo. So these kind of big dirty businesses actually continue to bring all these false solutions, which is one of the big problem for our sachet ban. But otherwise, I think the sachet ban is moving into other countries as well. But that is one way we can think about the future. But with the pandemic, I really see that the amount of waste dumping in the southern countries will be increased in the coming months.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a question here from Chia Chung Heng to all panelists. So we'll take turns to respond. Basically, she's asking that it was mentioned by Mr. Hemantha that Singapore has an agreement with Sri Lanka and are planning to send their waste to Sri Lanka. From my understanding, Singapore claims to have a good waste management system, incinerator or waste to energy. Can you elaborate more on this? So I think Mr. Hemantha, if you would like to offer your input on this.
Yeah, so this proposal came around 2017. So the previous government wanted to have a free trade agreement with Singapore and Sri Lanka, and this includes reducing all these the tariff, tax concessions, etc., for various items coming from Singapore to Sri Lanka or from Sri Lanka to Singapore. But in this list, there were two lists. That one list, they are going to completely remove all the taxes for certain items, and some other items will have 20%, 30% tax reductions. In this no tax list, we found that 62 different type of waste, including all these heavy metal waste, plastic waste, and all other waste. Now, and we thought, because the Singapore used to claim that Singapore has a good waste management mechanism. They have a big incinerator in the heart of the city, so therefore so they can manage. But one thing we realized that Singapore itself cannot manage their own waste, and also Singapore is a big port, and they are receiving thousands of ships coming from other countries. Maybe Singapore wanted to have another final dumping site through all these the government-to-government free trade agreement. So that is our understanding. At the same time, there were other proposals came, like waste to energy, so-called sanitary landfill, which is against the wish of the public. So we thought that also whatever the imports they are going to bring waste, so they will be either they will burn in the waste to energy plant, or either dump in the location. So there were a lot of protests, and some people even went to the courts, and therefore at that point we were able to block. The agreement I believe they have signed, but not allowing all these waste to come to Sri Lanka was a success of the civil society engagement. But this kind of free trade agreements we found not only with Sri Lanka, but Singapore has signed with other countries as well. Perhaps you have to watch what those agreements are really importing to your countries or exporting.
Interesting. Shows that waste is not just confined to developed countries up in Europe or in the US or Canada, but even in our own region. Ray, do you have any records to say that there are waste coming in from Singapore to the Hong Kong port? Is this something new for you, or do you have any information on that?
Yep, so far we can't see the because I just look at the latest status from January to March in 2021. So from Hong Kong, the amount of import and we export plastic waste are mainly from like the United States, the Canada, Australia, and also we exported to these plastic waste to like the Philippines and Vietnam. So I think the what the guests just mentioned, the situation of Singapore is relatively new to me. Yeah, so I would like to maybe check this situation and also the data in maybe the last few years to see if any hint on this trend will be emerging.
Okay, interesting. Okay. Now, before we end the session, I would like to invite Ray, Hemantha, and Magesh to share their closing words or call to action, or maybe an invitation to us journalists to get involved in stopping waste trade, not just in the Asia Pacific, but globally. So I'll probably start with Magesh. Any closing remarks?
Yes, I saw there was a question by Mr. Arul Das regarding why Malaysia issues AP to import plastic waste despite its damage to the environment and the people. So I would like to answer that first.
Okay.
So as we have mentioned in Sahabat Alam and also CAP, we have been campaigning against this waste trade since 2017 when we found out that China is going to close its door to waste imports. Because at that time itself, we knew that somehow Malaysia is going to be targeted for all this waste trade. So we have been campaigning, and then we are saying the cost and burden to public health and the environment, it is far outweighs the revenue that the Malaysian government is thinking that they will get. Yeah, and also I would like to share a WTO report. Yeah, which as World Bank report. Yeah, sorry, it was estimated 70% of plastic recycled in Malaysia was imported scrap. Yeah, plus and the Malaysian government has also been saying this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. So, and the plastic recyclers in Malaysia are relying on imported waste. Yeah, but what we can say is all this, even if it's waste that is coming in, even if it is a factory which has all its probably the license, and also they say they have all this technology, yeah, to ensure there's no environmental pollution. But we can see there is a lot of residual. Not all waste that is being brought in can be recycled. So as Hemantha has mentioned, Ray also has mentioned, it is all going into either waste to energy plants or incinerators. In Malaysia also we have been seeing new proposals for waste to energy plants. And the same Ministry of Housing and Local Government has also said each state will have its own incinerators. We have been, since 2000, we have been campaigning against waste incineration. Yeah, and we have been campaigning to stop waste incinerators. But then we are seeing that a lot of projects coming up, and it seems like a losing battle unless communities and also the media keeps highlighting this issue, yeah, so that we can stop this waste trade and also incineration and plastic, yes, ban on the single-use plastics which are not necessary. So we need everybody's support.
Okay. So in conclusion, Magesh, what would you think? You're a veteran activist on this. What would you think could be a solution to all this? Your closing remarks.
I mentioned it is all of our responsibility. Yeah? The Malaysian government has to be responsible about the waste that is being coming in. The exporting countries also have to be responsible of their own waste. Like we can see EU groups in European Union, Zero Waste Europe, they've come up with a manifesto campaigning to stop EU from exporting waste out to Asia and other countries, yeah, all these developing countries. So we need to have the same momentum here in Malaysia, and also we have to stop US from exporting their waste. US is one of the largest exporters, including UK, to stop exporting their waste to developing countries. So it's not only Asia, they're also sending their waste to Latin America, and also trying to circumvent all these problems, all these restrictions by other countries by transshipment of this waste. So we need everyone to campaign against this waste trade.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Yeung, what is your closing remarks on this? What can we do moving forward?
I would propose that the regional or the global cooperation is necessary, as what we have mentioned, that the data transparent and also shed the light on this illegal waste trade under the spotlight, so that what we can engage different stakeholders, including to engage maybe our lawmaker to put the waste trade issue in the agenda of our civil society, and also the law legislative system. So that is, I think, what we can do in the first way. And the second way is that to share our latest data or the breaking situation to our alliance, that to expose the every plastic waste, illegal waste imports, re-exports, or exports. So what we can do is to engage more green groups in other countries, that including maybe signing a petition to raise the issue awareness, and also to what we have mentioned, that if any breaking news or data that we would like to share to other green groups, then we can engage as a region to keep the and stay alert on the plastic waste issue, to avoid and also stop this plastic waste in the future.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hemantha, what can we do moving forward? What is your insight?
I think when in this neoliberal model, so it's very hard to find an ethical business. So everybody wants to make more money, and with the corrupt politicians, so it makes easier for them. So I think the responsibility for the civil society and also the government, the good officers in the government, is really important. Now, when you hear about circular economy, you have very good feelings. Now, the information I got about a week ago about the circular economy industrial park, which is going to come to Sri Lanka near the Hemantha harbor, is going to bring all type of waste. It's a Hong Kong-based company called King Spread Development Limited. So they are going to bring all sort of waste to separate copper, aluminium, recycled plastics, and the other rare metal, and even the PCB machine. So it's all going to be very dirty businesses. They are going to bring under the tagline of circular economy. So we have to keep eye on what is going on, because in this system, no system is going to be transparent. So it's not going to be less corrupt, So we have to keep, the civil society need to keep pressure. So I think we have to unite as the Asian civil society and Asian people to stop all these import of trash into our region. I think we have to keep pressurizing our governments and all the other intergovernmental bodies not to bring all these dirty plastics, dirty trash into our region. I think it is the duty of the people to keep pressure continuously. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Very interesting again. On that note, basically, if there's any other questions from the panel or even the attendees, we are taking any questions if you want to pose. If not, also, then probably would like to thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, especially the three panelists. Please visit no-burn.org or breakfreefromplastic.org for details. And so again, thank you very much, everyone. If you have any questions, you can still continue to post them to the chat room or perhaps to an email. So thank you again, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much again for Ian and all the media people and also the speaker.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.